I'm Olivia. My pronouns are she, her.
I'm Megan, and my pronouns are she, they.
Hi, I'm Anise. My pronouns are she, her, hers.
And I'm Bella, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and we are Hugh's Angels.
So this week we are talking about Out of the Past, which is about a private investigator who now owns a gas station, but has to come to terms with his past, and ultimately follows his demise in that endeavor. So yeah.
So specifically relating to the film, this week we're going to be discussing hard-boiled dialogue. And for context, in film noir and in like all forms of film or literature, everything, hard-boiled is sort of like not a genre so much as a style. And so Britannica dictionary, that's the word, says hard-boiled fiction used graphic sex and violence, vivid but often sorted up urban backgrounds, and fast-paced slangy dialogue. And so hard-boiled fiction is like a genre that was pertained mostly to sort of crime novels, and it's also obviously related to film noir in that a hard-boiled film is generally one in which the protagonist is dropped into this world of sort of danger and like mistrust and suspicion, all this stuff, hard-boiled, dropped right into the hot water. And so hard-boiled dialogue is often that of this sort of like weird subset of our world where like everyone acts really tough and they're all like very impersonal, and like there's a sort of a very impersonal front that everyone puts up, and that like all of the dialogue is so, it's like the opposite of intimate almost. It's like very like I said, like slangy, like there's a lot of it that's just sort of like bouncing up, like bantery almost. So yeah, a lot of it's like that, and that like it tough on the outside sort of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also it's just the delivery of it is it's very deadpan, and a lot of the words, like a lot of what they're saying is like very dramatic and even can be very emotional, but the way it's delivered is very much just like straight faced. Even when they're like being mean to each other or like I don't know, conveying love, either way, it's kind of explained the same. And I think one quote that definitely has that slanginess to it is, quote, "I don't need a crack like that anymore than I need your dough." And that is Bailey talking to Wit, and they're just kind of bantering off each other. But the use of the slang word crack, like, I don't need I don't need kind of like your lip, I don't need your attitude essentially anymore than I need your money. So using that slang, the way he says it is like very fast. They're going back and forth at each other really quickly, and that definitely like exemplifies the hard-boiled dialogue.
It almost feels like the way cartoon characters talk to each other. And I think when we watch it together as a class, our class tends to laugh at dialogue like that because it really imitates character-like behavior as like kids would like that. I think, and I almost wonder if it's just because it was back then and maybe that was normal. And it makes me wonder, okay, if roles were reversed and these people were actually watching the way we speak, would they find it funny too because it's so out of the ordinary? So for me, like when I listen to that dialogue, I literally instantly think about being with our classmates and them laughing to these lines because these lines are so, I don't know how to describe it, they're just not really part of the norm now. They're so like abnormal for us but very normal back then. It was like when I was right before we started recording the double indemnity line where he was like calling her baby but like in an aggressive like way that was like, it just made everybody laugh. So like that's what I find like a common theme between all these dialogues, that it is fast paced and it is very serious but in almost like a comedic way.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say, like, I mean, obviously I don't know because I didn't live in 1930, but I don't think that that's necessarily the way that they actually talked. I think it was definitely sort of, it was made a lot more punchy for cinema, and like, I would say it is more meant to build like I don't think that it's meant to be realistic and true to like the way people talk back then. I think that aspect of it is definitely more for like entertainment.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like,
Okay.
but I mean, I'm more specifically talking about like the nicknames. You know, like that dialogue, you could tell that's made for a movie. Just like when we watch a film now, you can tell like what's like for a film versus what would be said like in real time. But I think the nicknames for certain things I would say would stand true for real life, but for sure the dialogue is very dramatic. And I mean it's meant to be that way. I think when we think about theater performances, they have to be very big with their acting, and they have to, you know, elaborate with their words in ways that they don't have to do it in film. So yeah, I agree with you 110%.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing as Anise, talking about how like all of us kind of laugh at most of the lines that we have written down, at least. And I think that's really funny, obviously, because no one now says things like this. And one that really caught my eye was, you told me once I'd have to tell you sometime, well, this is it. Like, it's so intense. And I think that was when Bailey was talking to Anne in the car, telling him about the story of his life story, literally, about all his crime and everything. So it's just so intense. And I remember laughing at that because it's just like, who would say that? Like, can you think of anyone now or back then that would say that? I mean, I guess from the pop culture of these movies, like people could start saying things like that. So it's like, I can kind of hear it like being in actual person, but some of these things are just so extraordinary that you can't really, they honestly can't be said in person.
I think it's funny. Oh, sorry, continue.
I think also the way that they speak so much in like metaphors is really funny to me. There's one quote that's like, you're like a leaf that blows from one gutter to another, which is just like such a dramatic way to convey like that thought. But it really does, honestly, like all these, you know, kind of silly things we laugh at, it does really add to the drama of the film, especially since a lot of the acting is so much smaller. And like there's not a ton of like, there'll be moments of intense action, but for the most part it's just a lot of them talking to each other, going back really quickly back and forth with each other, but it never gets boring because it's like, what is this person going to say next? Because they speak in metaphor or they're saying something really dramatic. So yeah, that was a line that I really liked.
Yeah, I would say it's fascinating. It's fascinating to think about, in a way, in film noir, and you guys can disagree with me, but the way that I've sort of been seeing it is that the dialogue like really dresses the movie um in ways that doesn't at all get boring. I feel like personally, if I ever thought about a movie that doesn't have much going on besides dialogue, I would like think, oh, like it wouldn't catch my attention like very much, because you like constantly hearing people talk back and forth is a lot sometimes. But in these films, because they have the different metaphors, and to be honest, like I would never think of a metaphor, especially in a heated moment. Like obviously it's scripted, but just to think these people are in the middle of doing a crime and then boom, here comes a metaphor, I would have been so stressed. There would have just been no way that I would have said something like that. So I think the dialogue really dresses up the film in ways that I would have never really thought would have been interesting until I started watching film noir. Because the dialogue itself says way more than what's actually going on in the film.
I agree. I think that it's kind of funny because film noir and melodrama are often like compared to be very similar, like thematically. But I would say that the way that it handles dialogue often is very different, because the way film noir handles it is sort of, it's very surface level, bantery, impersonal sort of thing. But it also has the drama the same way that melodrama, everything's like extrapolated and incredibly dramatic, and like every emotion is so drawn out. And I think it kind of comes from Slippery because they both make us laugh, but for like such different reasons, which I think is funny.
Yeah,
feel
I
like
think
oh, sorry.
you can go, Bella.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that I feel like we should probably keep going with the quotes.
Both. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but one that I had written down was they say the day you die, your name is written on a cloud. And that one really stuck with me because I was like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, literally, what does that mean?
It's so out of nowhere, like it means nothing.
What did you take it to mean? Let's do a little interpreting.
Okay, yeah. So what I took that as was that, like, when I guess it was like everyone who dies leaves part of them on Earth. But like I didn't really get how that connected with the film. So I was like, why was that said? And but then I was like, oh, as the movie goes on, like, oh, I kind of get it because like every single action done by every single person impacted a bunch of other people. So I guess that's like kind of how it played in. But then I was still like, why would you say it like that? Like it's just weird.
Honestly, I was laughing because it reminds me of, do you guys know the movie where it's like every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings or something? Like the Chris, I was like, it sounds like that. It's such a different movie.
Well, honestly, I was even thinking like maybe there's like religious like connection to it almost. I don't know. I was in my capstone today, and Professor Gohart actually said something that reminded me of that. Oh my gosh, it just slipped my mind. She said something about how crime, I think the quote that she said was crime doesn't pay. And so for some reason that just reminded me like it's sort of almost the opposite. I don't know. It's confusing, but in my head it's making sense. So I'm
No, yeah,
trying
I
to
think
explain to you, but I can't.
no, yeah, I definitely think like there is, I agree that it is kind of this idea of like you don't like, because obviously clouds are like circulating like and are kind of almost watching over. So I guess it kind of has to do with how I don't know, you after you die, you do stay or you have like, I don't know, almost this like omnipresent kind of way about it. I don't know, almost, I don't know, that's like to me is similar to like I guess like a god in that way, which I think is definitely interesting. Not interesting, it's fascinating to look at that. And how that plays into the film, because I think a lot of also these quotes I feel like bring up different themes that maybe are not super apparent in just like a first watch through, like something like that, which is like pretty poetic and could definitely have a lot of different meanings, but is also at the same time seems very like antithetical to like what the film is about, as it's super like you know, super straightforward, super hard boiled, but this is so opposite to that, like to that theme.
Honestly, my favorite pieces of like dialogue weren't necessarily the metaphors as much as like ones that I had picked out were like when what the guy says like some dame took 4 shots at him with his own 38 and made one of them good, and then another part which isn't an exchange but 3 separate pieces of dialogue which happen to happen in order when they say, should I ask you why you didn't call the law? Should you? I guess not. Like they have such weird roundabout ways of saying things that just make no sense to me, but I think that they're very entertaining.
Yeah, and they're even blunt. Like
Yeah.
there's this line, deaf and dumb, huh? Like I could never imagine saying that to somebody, like straight to their face, like that, and in an intense moment too. Um, that dialogue again, it the dialogue really entertains people. It keeps people invested in the film. It gives you clues. Like it does everything that actors don't really need to act too much because the dialogue acts for them in a way. Um, and that just goes back to, I honestly like in film noir, what I've been realizing is the dialogue really dresses the film. It doesn't matter. Usually, if you're sitting there, if the audience is sitting there and watching a scene in one specific room for like 15-20 minutes, the audience can start to lose it and start to wander and not pay attention. But with the dialogue that goes on, it's really hard to take your mind off of it, because the minute you take your mind off of it, that one piece of dialogue that they're talking about back and forth is like could be really crucial later, or it's just like funny banter between two characters. And so although these dialogues are funny and they're metaphors and they're things that people wouldn't say. It really does play a huge part in the film.
Yeah, it's so, oh, I almost said interesting. It's honestly weird. That a lot of the dialogue is just like, you're mean to the other person, like the deaf and dumb like, what? Okay, that's just one example. And then there's like another one that's, you're no good for anyone but me, you're no good, neither am I, that's why we deserve each other. Like, obviously that makes sense because they both do pretty horrible things in this film, but it's never like complimenting anyone. It's always like, you're the bad guy, and yeah, like, I'm also the bad guy, but you are an awful person. And I noticed that in every single film noir, it's always just like putting the other person down, which is like making it like, yeah, everything is like a group job. Like, it's never just like one evil person, like everyone's kind of evil. So
Yeah, that quote, that's like one that I really liked, because I think it exemplifies how, like, though they are the protagonists of this film, they are not likable in any regard. And that almost seems like a line that like an antagonist would say, which is arguable. I mean, that's the line that Kathy says that, and she's the femme fatale, and definitely could be considered like to have like an like to be the antagonist. But I think also, like, obviously Bailey is like also not necessarily a likable character. So I think that just shows how like film noir really turns a lot of like very like traditional like story, like plot structures and storylines and how characters are written in traditional Hollywood films, and really like turns it on its head, because these characters like are evil, and obviously in the end they do like meet their demise, but the whole story still centers so much on them, which is pretty unusual.
I'll say one like minor thing is like I feel like one of the key functions of this sort of hard-boiled dialogue is that like it I wouldn't say that Bailey and Kathy are like unlikable characters. I would say that this dialogue makes bad people into likable characters. Like you don't, it's not, they're obviously bad people and she's acknowledging that, but like I love that line. Like I think it makes me like her as a character, not as a person necessarily. And I feel like that's one of the most important things about hard-boiled dialogue is it makes you like bad people without like feeling like you're sympathizing with them. Like it's like an anti-hero sort of thing. Like they're funny, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. And now that you say that, that definitely like that makes a lot of sense of like how, which even like I think is that's like how film noir, like it makes even the audience kind of become a part of that like sinister thing of like, now you're like, oh, I'm invested in these characters, I want to see what happens, even though I know they're going to keep doing terrible things, which I think is also it's a way that it pulls the audience in, but not in like a we're being critical of these characters, but rather we really do want to see what happens. And I agree that that line is it's like I would say it's like iconic that she says that, and because it just, and like the view, I think they're standing out in front of the house, there's this, you know, this beautiful view, it's this dramatic moment, and like that's the line that comes out of it, which is again like for film noir as usual, but for regular like traditional film is definitely it's an unusual moment.
this is kind of like off topic, but Kathy confused me. Every single time it seemed like she was going to do something good, she like then went bad, which I knew, like I should have known that obviously she was bad, or bad, because I actually do like her, but like every time she confused me and I was like, how did she get me again? Like I literally thought she was going to be like the good, well, I mean, the good girl, I guess, but like she never was, obviously. And every time I was like, literally, how did she get me again? I don't know why that happened to me, but yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, like oftentimes I like the femme fatale characters, but the thing that really annoyed me about Kathy was that I could never tell if she actually had any convictions of her own, if she like had one thing at her core that she was staying true to, or if she was just like switching sides constantly, which kind of annoyed me because even if she like was with the bad guys, I don't mind as long as like I feel like she made her like a little bit more annoying as a character. She was like, I couldn't tell if she was being genuine. It almost annoyed me more if she was being genuine and that she wanted to like switch constantly. Like I wish she had been playing them both. I'm not sure, but
yeah, like it was like always like, I've never stopped hating him, Jeff. I couldn't help myself. I was caught too. Like every time I was like, oh my God, like, right. Like, so I don't know. She was a really good character. I liked her a lot.
Yeah, I think also like the moments of sarcasm are really great. Like when Bailey is leaving, he's like, give you a little extra time to figure out how you're gonna cross me, but you won't. Like, and then he leaves, or I think closes the door or something that's like kind of dramatic of just like, I know you're gonna try to, you know, get back at me, but you won't do it. And it's again just really snappy, really quick. The other characters like don't even react to that. There's never this like really explosive emotional moment. It's just kind of said, which I think just makes it like that much better.
yeah, I would say that like disingenuous delivery does aid in the like the each character's ability to sort of have the perceived upper hand on everyone else, which I think is a big thing about film noir. Is like you want one person. Everyone thinks that they know what's happening, sort of. So like, and like this way of speaking, and that like it's so not genuine.
Yeah, everyone just has
I
this
don't really know
idea
where I
that
was
like
going with that.
no, it's a good point of like everyone has this idea that they have somehow like masterminded the situation, but they each have like very many faults, and like in the end like no one has, or they just all have but in different ways, so that it's impossible for anything to work out successfully. So I think that's definitely a really good point.
We haven't said the quote, you can't make deals with a dead man yet, right? Like, yeah, like, no, we can't, like, obviously, but like that line was like so powerful. I remember hearing it and being like, damn, like, I mean, it was kind of expected that she was going to kill him because she was obviously caught, and it was kind of like the last thing she could have done to try and get her out of it. And then of course she tried to trick Bailey again and try and get him to like leave and everything, and just like, I don't know, it just, I loved that line because I was like, that, you're right, like you can't make a deal with a dead man.
Yeah, I also love it's when Bailey's in the car and he's going to the Fulton residence, and he's talking to the driver, and again he's speaking in like these ridiculous metaphors of like, all I can see is the frame. I'm going in there now to look at the picture. Like, what? Like that is so like stupid, but also so like iconic. Like he is in the middle of like investigating like what comes to be like a murder, but he's like, I don't know, talking about like, I don't know, just I feel like all these characters are kind of like, I don't know, they just are each like, the way they narrate themselves and what they're doing is just so, it's so dramatic, but again it's like the delivery does not suggest that at all.
There's a line, it's not really a line because she doesn't actually say it, but before they die at the end of the film, I doesn't Kathy mouth double crosser to Bailey before they die, because he called the cops and like literally did double cross her and made like caught them and killed them. So that's obviously not an actual line, but like it kind of is because she's like kind of saying it, but that's also like just a really good line, I guess.
Yeah, no, she says something. I don't exactly know what it was, but it was something of like two time and double cross,
Yeah.
like something like that, of just like, and that was like the last, like her last line in the movie. So yeah, no, it was definitely a great moment.
We have about 6 minutes left. Do we want to go to our segment?
Did we get enough quotes?
Yep.
I mean, the only other one I had was the waitress one where she said like two things like smell outside 100 feet, burning hamburger, and a romance. I love that so much. I love it so much.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the first ones that was in the film that was just like, I don't know.
So
I just
funny.
knew from that moment I was like, there's more stuff to come with this, because that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can move into our segment.
Cool. So for Hugh's Angels, our segment is us deciding who we think Hugh's best friend or favorite character would be in the film that we watched for that week. So for this week, we decided that it would be Marnie, the cafe lady, at basically right at the beginning of the film. And so now we're gonna make up her life story. So does anyone want to go first?
I said that rumors could be that in her free time when the cafe is not full, that she plans or comes up with recipes on how to poison people through the food. So that was like something that I said that she could potentially do. You never know. But it sort of brings me back to his story when he was talking about Blockbuster, which is funny because when he used to work at Blockbuster, I had like a similar thing. I worked at a kids trampoline park, and there was like a point where we have to go through a procedure on like what happens if the lights go off. Like we have to block the exit so none of the kids get stolen. And then like in the process, they were like the manager was like, okay, like where do you think you could like take a kid through an exit? And so it was like we were all planning a kidnapping in the middle. Like it was a whole bunch of high schoolers in a trampoline park, like planning this kidnapping that would never happen. Like
Oh my god,
Oh
that's
my
so good.
god.
I put that story in there because I feel like Hughes would like it because it's just so like it's a kids trampoline car like park, and then you have a group of high schoolers who work there talking about, okay, if you were to kidnap a kid, where would be the exit that you would go to so that we can block that exit? Like it was just so absurd. But that's why I think that, I think it makes sense that she, in her free time, you know, could be like, if I were to poison somebody, what would be like the best recipe to do that or something like that?
I think that she takes money from people to kill she puts poison in their coffee and they give her like money and a description of the person and roughly what time that person will probably be in. And then she slips something in their coffee, like a slow reaction poison or something.
Oh my god.
Yeah, something that doesn't happen right then and there. So she gets away with it, but maybe an hour after they leave, they're done.
And that's why
Yeah,
she's because nobody's ever caught her.
exactly, and no one ever will. And I think that she definitely, I mean, this cafe, if it's a film noir, it's a front for something. Could be gambling, could be, I don't know, something even crazier. But this is the cafe. There's more that meets the eye to this cafe, I believe.
I mean, that could be how she pays the bills.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
And I think that Marnie was probably sleeping with Wit. So, no, listen. So she was sleeping with Wit, and then they came up with this whole plan because she like worked for Bailey because it's like the same thing. So she was like, how can I own this entire thing? So she gets Wit to hire him to get another woman. So she's like completely out of it. So like, you see where I'm going? So then they cause this entire problem, and like obviously Marnie is completely like, she's like 20 steps away from Wit because no one would ever suspect that they were ever be together. So she basically like in the end kills everyone. Wit was like not a part of the plan. Wit's death wasn't a part of the plan, but like kills all of them and has no evidence as to like being a part of the plan, and gets all the money, gets the building, gets everything, gets a cafe, gets the gas station. That's my theory.
Pretty elaborate theory.
Marnie created all this. Yes.
Very film noir.
Yes.
I would say so.
All right. So I think that's it.
Yes.
All right.